Agree to Madam Speaker, and we're hearing tonight about people being soft on crime and tough on crime, but that side of the House is very selective on the crimes that they want to prosecute, Madam Speaker. And I do acknowledge that Katie Niven is a good chair of the Select Committee, but I cannot agree with what she has just said just before in that speech before as well. And I had hoped that the National Party would be supporting this bill. We expect the National Party to sort of hug the middle, but unfortunately they seem to be incredibly distracted and incredibly attached to their ACT Party mantra, Madam Speaker. So it's disappointing that once, and we expect this from the ACT Party. They're the big business on hyper-capitalism. It's we know that they will do anything to burn down workers' rights. That's what they're about, and we expect that. But we also sometimes have hope. We have hope for the National Party that actually they'll see the light and try to hug the middle, but unfortunately that is not the case. They are still unfortunately subservient vassals to the ACT Party. And I was hopeful actually that the smell of burnt plastic in school lunches might have convinced them, Madam Speaker, to support this bill, but unfortunately that does not seem to be the case. Fortunately there is a government party that does sound that they have unshackled themselves from the neoliberal freight train of capitalism and will be supporting this bill, hopefully at the end of this as well. But Madam Speaker, I do want to acknowledge Ibrahim Omar, who brought this bill to the House in this first reading. I acknowledge his presence here today as well. What a momentous occasion for him to be back in the House to see this bill hopefully be passed into law. And I feel that it will happen, Madam Speaker. And it is important, and people have spoken about it before, because I spent a bit of time tonight reading his first reading speech, where he talked about his actual experience of having his wages stolen from him, and the case that he talked about himself when he was working on a farm in Wairarapa, and then his employer telling him that they didn't like his work and just took his pay, Madam Speaker. And as the previous speakers from the Labour Party have said, and I do want to acknowledge Camilla Belich's expert shepherding of this bill through the House, noted that there was a 2019 MB report which said that there was such significant impact on migrant workers, and that significant impact was wage theft, Madam Speaker. So this bill is incredibly simple. If you nick something, you get pinged for it. If you nick something, you get pinged for it. If you're an employee, you put your fingers on the till, you're going to get pinged for it. That's what's there at the moment. But if you're an employer and you put your fingers into your employee's pocket to take their money, you don't get pinged for it. And we hear from that side of the House, Madam Speaker, that particular corner of the House, Madam Speaker, that there is a pathway for workers to take, that it's the civil pathway, civil action pathway, Madam Speaker. But if for those of us who come from families, who are migrant families, where mum and dad don't speak such good English, they're just recent immigrants in here, how are they able to access that pathway, Madam Speaker? How are they supposed to at least not only access that pathway, but afford that pathway, Madam Speaker? It is outrageous. And that's why it's so important that this House turns its mind to supporting this bill through the House, to supporting and upholding workers' rights, because it is a basic right. It is a decent right. If you do a hard day's work, you should get a fair day's pay. If you do a hard day's work, you should get a fair day's pay. And people shouldn't be allowed to hold back your wages. And that is what is at the centre of this, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I don't want to prolong this kōrero because we want to get to this bill being centred here in the House, but I was thinking of a whakatauki, and it goes, ko te amorangi ki mua, ko te hapai o ki muri. Ko te amorangi ki mua, ko te hapai o ki muri. And what that means is, if you've got things sorted at the front and you've got things sorted at the back, that's when things are harmonious. So when you're on the marae and people are doing things well in the kitchens, and your workers are doing well in the kitchens, and that enables people in the front to do their bits well at the front as well. And what that points to is good relationships. We need good relationships in the workplace, and acknowledging that for many, if not most, of employers, they won't be having their fingers in the employee's back pocket. But it points to the importance of making sure that we have those good relationships. But those employers that are stealing, that are thieving from their employees, this bill goes some way to addressing that. So, Madam Speaker, on that, the Greens support this bill.
Now, it's great when Teanua actually points out the obvious of stealing from someone's wallet.
Yeah, it was a great speech. He's a great advocate for workers, Teanua, and I get on with him very well. And he's a great spokesperson for the Greens on this. And I've noticed
area. He's been, I think, every time this bill's, I'm not sure about Committee of the House, but every time the bill's on second and third reading, he's always been one of the Green speakers.
Yeah, because he's their spokesperson. So, I think they usually get their spokespersons to speak on it. But I think he made a good point about the National Party being very selective. I think it was an uncomfortable position for the National Party to be in, voting against something that was essentially, as Ibrahim said in the first reading, I think everyone repeated throughout the process, a tough on crime bill. And that's not their natural home. They do like to say they are the party of law and order. And so I think it was an uncomfortable position for them to be in. So a good point for him to raise.
I mean, what Ibrahim went through was horrific, because the farm that he was talking about is pretty much down the road from where I live. skipping a drive away, and it's like, it's terrible the way how migrant workers are treated in this country. I was absolutely horrified by what he said. But I have a question for you. Why do you think National is against this bill if they claim to be pro-worker?
I mean, I can't obviously speak exactly for what their reasons would be, but I imagine that they think that, well, I mean, if you listen to their reasons, some of them say that there'll be additional compliance measures. I mean, that's clearly ridiculous.
It's more compliance and
already
stealing wages from your staff. They're not stealing wages. It takes more work.
Exactly. So that's clearly ridiculous. I think they did, I mean, the thing that they do say again and again is they rely on the civil remedies, but obviously this bill will likely end in some employers being prosecuted, and maybe for them they're worried about that outcome. For me, I think that's, if the police believe there's a arguable case and they have to follow the prosecution guidelines for it, then I think that's a good thing. And I think the deterrent factor on its own is likely to be maybe the best thing from this bill, because we do really want employers to take their obligations seriously. It's not a joke. People do deserve to be paid. So I think, that's probably the reason. But I had a point I was going to raise with you earlier, which was, I think in Teanua's speech, he mentioned that Abraham was in the house. So it was when I did my my speech, he wasn't in the house, and I was kind of looking around for him because I was expecting him to turn up. And then partway through the speech, he came, and we'd said to him, as a former MP, you can sit. They've got little seats at the front where you can sit down. So he sat down there. So that was a really lovely moment to see him in the house, and to be able to see this bill being passed. It was a really great feeling. But it would have been nice if he was there earlier. But it was kind of a bit of an emotional roller coaster having him arrive.
And also being in that tight 10 minutes. Like I know. I was texting Greg O'Connor the night before when the House was an urgency, and I'm going, is Camilla's bill going to actually happen? And he's going, I hope so. It's going to be on there. But he says the emergency motion ends at 1 p.m. And they are continuing with Members' Day, but he said the local bill on there, but he didn't know what it is. But I texted him saying, is that the Takapuna Boat Club one? Because that was another bill that we've been following as well, because it's the first local bill that we've been able to cover in our series.
Yeah. No, that's a good bill. We voted for that bill, and I did a bit of a longer contribution on that in its first reading, but that is a good bill. I think that's actually a really good point, and it's a really interesting point, is that I don't know if probably you on the podcast, both of you will be aware, but I don't think many people, members of the public, know that we don't actually know when a lot of bills will come up for debate. So often we'll prepare speeches for bills that, for whatever reason, won't get on the order paper. Will be on the order paper, but we won't get to. And a lot of times, maybe things go faster, especially in committee stages, faster or slower. And obviously, we've got some control over that. The government parties especially have control over that. So I think often people think, oh well, a bill will be read at a certain time and everyone will know that and we can plan around it. Well, actually, it's really difficult.
It's difficult for us to plan a week show.
I bet.
Gamble on
I feel for you. It's really tough. I mean, it is really tough to know what will be coming up. So, especially on Members' Day. So, essentially, the order on Members' Day is you have local or private bills that will always go ahead of the other members' bills, and then bills that have been part read will usually go before usually go before any other bill, and then third readings will go before subsequent stages. But you might have noticed that that the next bill is a Greens bill, and that was Huhana's bill, and we actually swapped the order of that. So my bill could go a bit earlier. So that was
I saw that.
Very kind of her to allow that.
Yeah. Oh, now let's go.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our